on my mind that I wanted to express. Not only do you do a great job with TNT because you're brilliant with basketball, but I also think that you would do a great job as an executive in the NBA. Unfortunately, that has not happened for you yet. I bring that up because even though he wasn't talking about executives, Commissioner Adam Silver had to broach the subject of the paucity of African Americans coaching in the National Basketball Association. Alvin Gentry is gone. Nate McMillan is gone. Now Doc Rivers got let go by the Clippers, although he'll likely have a job by the end of this weekend. The thing that I find ironic about all of this is that when social justice issues were going on and blacks were complaining about a plethora of things, rather, but it wasn't just issues with law enforcement. It was things that were going on from a systemic perspective. Now we find ourselves in a situation where blacks are losing jobs but ain't necessarily getting jobs, particularly in the coaching ranks. I want to know, as a guy covering the NBA the way that you do, how much have you paid attention to it? How alarmed are you by what you've seen, particularly in terms of what's been happening to these African-American coaches?
Well, inclusion and diversity is the very fabric of what makes America what we are. So if you don't have it, and if you don't have diversity and inclusion, and then I think it makes it very difficult. I think it's almost impossible for the league to have, I think upwards of 75% or more of the players in the league are African American, and then it doesn't not represented anywhere else. It's basically saying that you're basically only can be talent. And that's impossible. There are so many guys who, if you play 10 to 15 years in the NBA, that experience that you have and you gain and the knowledge that you gain, if you're any other business, Max and Steve and any other company, if you left IBM after 15 years of service, you'd be the most sought after in the high executive level. You'd be most sought after person on the open market in other businesses, in other parts of the same business. Basketball and sports seems to be the only thing they say, well, no, you need to go to the mailroom. After you've done 15 years of being an NBA champion, an NBA all-star, a veteran of the game, and all the knowledge that you have. Can you tell me LeBron James, after 20 years, could not coach a basketball team? He's coaching one right now, in a sense. So it's the only sport that they look at. And then you say, do they do that because it is an African-American heavily based, or they do it because that's just a thought process? Either way, it's wrong. And for me, that's how I look at it. I just think that your service, 20 years, if Stephen A. and Max said, hey, I'm going to leave the ESPN and I'm going to do something else in media, you are the most sought after people because of your knowledge and information that you have. So why wouldn't it translate in anything else? In sport is for some reason, a place that they don't do that.
Well, I mean, this country has a long history of African-American labor, but white ownership and management. And I think that's why it's an important issue, Stephen A., that you point out.
Philly's coaching vacancy we discussed earlier in the show is only 1 of 6 in the NBA right now. There are currently only 4 head coaches in the NBA: Lloyd Pierce, J.B. Bickerstaff, Dwayne Casey, Monty Williams. In the 2012-2013 season, there were 14 black head coaches in the NBA. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver spoke yesterday on this subject. Please take a listen.
I don't see a way to operate a league where the league office, the commissioner, is dictating to a team who they should or shouldn't hire, or who they should or shouldn't fire, frankly. That's the other side of the coin. Having said that, I know we can do better. We have 6 openings right now. We're in discussions with all of those teams about making sure there's a diverse slate of candidates. We've looked at what might be an equivalent to a Rooney-type rule in the NBA, and I'm not sure it makes sense. I mean, I'm open-minded if there are other ways to address it. There is a certain natural ebb and flow to the hiring and firing, frankly, of coaches, but, the number's too low right now. And again, I think let's talk again after we fill these 6 positions and see where we are, because I know we can do better, and I think we will do better.
Stephen A., we just touched on this subject with Kenny the Jet Smith, obviously, in terms of executives and his desire to be an exec. But as far as coaching, how big of a problem is this, the lack of diversity at the head coaching position in the NBA?
Well, it's a huge problem. And, I'm just trying to be cool. And it really bothers me. And I don't really want to explode because that's just counterproductive with something like this, but it deserves an explosion. And I'll tell you why. The league is almost 75% black. You have coaches like Mike D'Antoni, and Mike D'Antoni should be a head coach in this league, I guess. I'm not here to denigrate him in any way, but he did have a chance in Phoenix, Houston, L.A., New York. He's never been to an NBA Finals. And you already heard his name. If it wasn't for Doc Rivers getting fired by the Los Angeles Clippers or mutually agreeing to part ways, whatever you want to believe, understand that Mike D'Antoni would be named the next head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. That's what they were about to do until Doc Rivers lost his job in Los Angeles. And the question is why? Mark Jackson hasn't received a call. Alvin Gentry is in New Orleans, and you look at the number of games guys missed due to injury and things of that nature. Anthony Davis wanting to leave town, et cetera, but now David Griffin comes in there, and Alvin Gentry has to go, okay? And everybody respects Alvin Gentry. We know he can coach. Nate McMillan loses the job in Indiana. I wasn't mad about that because, I know that he went home in the first round 4 consecutive years, but Victor Oladipo had been out pretty much the last year, and then this year he wasn't 100%. But the point is, I wanted to see Nate McMillan in a bigger market. Here's why I'm sad, guys. You know why I'm really sad? Because Adam Silver is the one up there addressing this issue. Where are the players? Wasn't these the same players that took a knee? Wasn't it the same players that wanted to bring attention to rogue actions by law enforcement officials and systemic racism? Weren't these the same players that contemplated boycotting games or not participating in the bubble? Wasn't this them? Wasn't this the same group of players that talked about really not needing to play because we really, really needed to focus on these issues? You don't even have stuff together in your own damn house. But you talk about cleaning somebody else's house everywhere. But in your house, where you have black coaches damn near becoming an endangered species, you have nothing to say? I ask you somewhat a rhetorical question. Both Max and Molly, I ask you both. When have you seen black players speaking on behalf of black coaches? Take your time, I'll wait. Because I haven't seen it. I'm on the air with y'all every day. I haven't seen it. Where the hell are they? You have nothing to say. Your basketball players, highly intelligent individuals that have compassion and conscience and heart. There is no question about that. I'm not questioning any of that. But your expertise are not about law enforcement official. Your expertise are not about systemic racism in all over corporate America or all of these other places. Your expertise is in a sport of basketball. And black men who coach in this league are marginalized, minimized, stripped of power, where we said that there are 9 blacks that are executives, supposedly, but only one calls his own shots in Masai Ujiri, and he works in another country. Where are the black players? Take your time. I'll wait. Go ahead, Max.
And Stephen A., he's African and now in Canada, but not African-American, right?
That's right.
So even the one guy calling his own shots is not African-American. That speaks as much to what this country has done to African-Americans as it does to the hiring practices of the NBA. Let me say this. First of all, I am sorry that you are so upset by this that you feel like you practically have to take a Xanax in order to talk about it, because that's what it felt like. You had to calm yourself all the way down. And in terms of players, guys like Andre Iguodala were resistant to a white coach who replaced a black coach when Steve Kerr replaced Mark Jackson, but Kerr seemed to win him over eventually. And that's part of the issue because, I expect Steve Nash to be loved by his team and to do a really good job. And there's nothing wrong with Steve Nash or the fact that he's white. The question is, why do so many more white people get the opportunity than black people in a league that's 3/4 black, right? And certainly like white American, how much of the NBA, people with experience actually playing the game on that level, are European American in particular, right? From the United States. That percentage is actually quite small. And this goes back to the history of our country and why it just sits the wrong way with so many, including me. Ownership, white. We go all the way back to the beginning. Management, white. The help is black. Labor is African American, but very rarely as a percentage of the population in management or ownership positions. And here we see preferences, doesn't mean that owners are racist, but personal preferences skewing market forces. In other words, you would think if you shut off disproportionately one part of the population from jobs, the job won't be done as well because the pool of realistic potential applicants to that job is shrunk, right? And so it won't be done as well. So why would a team that wants to be competitive, why would they accept that? That's because of, I think, personal preferences of ownership and management, which tends to be largely white. Does that mean they don't like black people? No. It means that when they interview people for the job, they like the cut of this guy's jib because in some ways they can relate to it more. And I think that's what we're experiencing in the NBA. I'll bet you this much, Stephen A. Adam Silver said there's 6 unfilled jobs, right? You think he may be making some phone calls to some teams and saying, can you look at some black candidates for this job, please?
Maybe, maybe not. I think Doc Rivers, like I said, it'll be 5 head coaches because I think Doc Rivers will have a job by this weekend, I'm predicting. I don't know whether it'll be Philly or Houston. I'm leaning towards Philly, but I think he will have a job by this weekend. But I want to say this, Max, before we close this show. You got a whole bunch of guys in this age of analytics and all of that other stuff. The bottom line is you don't see blacks being groomed for those positions by those involved in that world. I'd like to see that. But the biggest thing that I want to say is this. I don't want to hear a damn thing about racism in the NBA. I don't want to hear it. And here's why I don't want to hear it. Because when Adam Silver is addressing the subject before the players address it themselves, well, guess what? You sitting idly by and letting it happen. Unlike any other sport, these players are more empowered, arguably, than any slew of professional athletes in the history of this nation. And if you don't have anything to say about what's going on in your own damn backyard, then you deserve what you get because it's messy. It needs if it's a lawn, damn it, it needs to be mowed. If it's grass, it needs to be cut. You got to do something. And players want to comment about every damn thing else. And I support that. But to have this going on in your own damn backyard and you say nothing, and you leave it to the committee. I don't want to hear about white folks in the NBA. This is black players that don't say a damn thing on behalf of black men coaching them. Nothing to support them. I don't want to hear from Adam Silver and them. The players need to stand up and say something. Period.